In our day-to-day, we brush past strangers with a nod, share stories with friends over coffee, and offer help to neighbors. We live believing that there's a fundamental goodness in people. But what if I told you, beneath the smiles and the mundane, there's a darkness lurking? It's unsettling, isn't it? We've all heard whispers of those tales that chill us to the bone. Stories where individuals, shrouded in their own twisted desires, don't see others as living beings with lives of their own. Instead, they see them as mere tools to be used as they want. Where does such darkness stem from? How can a person treat another purely as a means to a sinister end? Join me as we delve into these harrowing accounts where the boundaries of human decency blur, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truths about the duality of human nature and the extent to which some can disregard another's very humanity. Genie was born in April 1957 in Arcadia, California. In the first few months of her life, she displayed normal development. However, concerns arose when she seemed to be slower in some developmental milestones. Genie's father, Clark Wiley, harbored an irrational disdain for his daughter. This hatred, combined with his already volatile temper, found a severe outlet when a doctor reportedly told the family that Genie seemed to be developmentally delayed. This seemed to confirm Clark's worst suspicions, and he decided the girl needed to be isolated from the outside world to protect her. For nearly 13 years, Genie's life was a dark room. The windows were covered, barring her from sunlight and a view of the outside world. She was left either tied to a child's potty chair or restrained in a crib, often fed only baby food, leading to chronic malnutrition. The starkness of her environment was such that even toys were an alien object to her. Genie wasn't the only victim of Clark's erratic and abusive behavior. Her mother, Irene, was both a victim and indirectly an enabler. Struggling with her own health issues, including blindness, and the oppressive control of her husband, Irene was seemingly hopeless, unable to intervene on her daughter's behalf or escape the situation with her. In November 1970, at the age of 13, Genie was discovered when her mother, Irene, decided to leave Clark after an argument and took Genie with her. They ended up at a social services office in Los Angeles. Officials were shocked to find a teenager with the appearance and behavior of a 6-year-old. She was severely malnourished, weighing only 59 pounds, couldn't speak, spat uncontrollably, and moved in a peculiar bunny walk where she held her hands up in front. Genie's condition was immediately recognized as severe neglect and abuse. Upon the revelation of Genie's dire state, immediate legal and protective measures were enacted. Genie was taken into protective custody while investigations into the depth of the abuse were launched. Irene was extensively questioned. She described the harrowing circumstances at home, painting a chilling picture of Clark's tyrannical control and the confinement of Genie. Irene, being visually impaired and herself a victim of Clark's abusive tendencies, was not held legally accountable for Genie's condition. The authorities deemed that she was equally victimized and lacked the capability to intervene on behalf of her daughter. Clark Wiley became the primary focus of the investigation, facing potential charges of child abuse, endangerment, and neglect. Following her rescue, Genie became a point of fascination for psychologists and linguists. She was subjected to numerous tests, and various professionals tried to rehabilitate her. While she made progress in certain areas, the years of isolation had left permanent marks. Language, in particular, was a challenge. Genie learned words and could communicate basic ideas, but the fluidity and complexity of language often confused her. While Genie's case presented a unique opportunity for research, there were significant ethical concerns. Many felt that the line between care and study was frequently blurred. Genie formed attachments to some of her caregivers, notably Jean Butler and Susan Curtis. However, changes in guardianship, institutionalization, and periods of neglect in her subsequent placements after her discovery were further traumas in an already tumultuous life. As the public and academic interest waned, Genie's life became more private. The last known reports indicated she was living in a care home in California, but her exact whereabouts and condition have remained private. Genie's life raises many questions about childhood development, the nature versus nurture debate, and the ethics of research. But more than anything, her story is a stark reminder of the profound need for human connection, care, and the basic rights every individual deserves. This is the man who robbed everything from Genie before she could even remember. Genie's treatment was a testament to Clark's deeply wounded sense of parenting and a disregard for human life. Not only did he physically restrain Genie, but the psychological torture was evident in how he communicated with her. Growls, barks, and hisses were his preferred mode of interaction, robbing her of even the most basic human connection. Clark's psychological hold extended beyond Genie. He exercised an oppressive control over the entire household. Visitors were rare, and even common outdoor activities were a luxury the family seldom experienced. His wife Irene, nearly blind and emotionally abused, was essentially a prisoner in her own home. His son, upon reaching a certain age, was forced to live in the garage. When Genie was discovered, it was a massive shock to the community and the nation. How could such an atrocity occur undetected for so long? Facing imminent arrest and the weight of public disgust, Clark Wiley took his own life just a few weeks after Genie's discovery, but he left behind a note, simple yet haunting, stating, "The world will never understand." Clark's actions reflect a profound and disturbing break from human empathy and morality. Genie's case remains an extreme illustration of the devastating impact of neglect and abuse. Understanding the depths of Clark's cruelty underscores the importance of early childhood development and the dire consequences when it's impeded. From the bleak room where Genie spent over a decade of her life to the interest of the academic community in her rehabilitation, her life is a powerful testament to the human spirit's resilience and the deeply ingrained need for connection, understanding, and love. In the story of Genie, a recurring theme emerges. She was viewed not as a daughter, but as a puppet treated worse than an animal. We will probably never know exactly why Clark did what he did. Whether he got pleasure in ruining his daughter's life or demanded absolute control, it is nevertheless a disturbing example of someone using someone else simply as a means. At some point in your life, I'm sure you've come across the phrase, "a means to an end." In essence, the means refers to the actions, tools, or methods employed, while the end signifies the ultimate goal or objective. For example, if someone says they view their day job merely as a means to an end, they're saying that even though they don't enjoy or find value in the job itself, they do it because it provides income, which helps them achieve another goal, like paying for education or funding a dream vacation. Now, it's time for a small crash course on the field of ethics. I'll try not to go too in-depth, so just hang in there. The field of ethics has many different ethical philosophies, which can be used to determine whether an action is right or wrong, such as utilitarianism or Kantianism. Utilitarianism originated from two main philosophers called Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Utilitarianism says that the best action is the one that maximizes utility. In simple terms, the outcome of an action is what matters. An action is good if it produces the most happiness or pleasure and minimizes pain or suffering for the highest number of people. So in the classic trolley problem example, it would always be right to pull the lever because 5 people would get to live instead of 1, which maximizes happiness and minimizes suffering. Kantianism was developed by Immanuel Kant. Kant believed that people have intrinsic worth and that ethical actions come from duty and adhere to a universal moral law. One of the central theories is the categorical imperative, a principle suggesting that you can only do something if you will that it should become a universal law. Essentially, you can't steal from someone because you wouldn't want to live in a world where it's accepted to steal constantly. Going back to the trolley problem, Kant would say that it's unethical to pull the lever because the action itself is wrong, no matter the consequences. Central to Kantian ethics is the notion of treating individuals as ends in themselves and never merely as means to an end. For Kant, using someone simply as a means is deeply unethical. It involves treating individuals not as people with free will deserving of respect, but simply as tools to achieve their goals. I should note that we use people as a means to an end all the time. When you go to a restaurant, you are using the server as a means to get food. You are still respecting their autonomy though, so it doesn't violate Kant's rule of ethics. The depravity we just saw in the case of Genie is an example of what happens when people disregard the free will of another person. Ariel Castro was born on July 10, 1960, in the small town of Dewey, Puerto Rico. The picturesque landscapes of his birthplace starkly contrasted with the dark path his life would later take. As a child, his family decided to move to the mainland United States, searching for better opportunities. They eventually settled in the diverse and bustling city of Cleveland, Ohio. Growing up, Castro faced the challenges many immigrants experience, such as adapting to a new culture and navigating a different educational system. Yet he seemed to integrate relatively well, developing connections and forging relationships with those around him. In his adult years, Castro secured a job as a school bus driver. To many, this role might seem mundane, but it's one imbued with significant responsibility. Parents entrusted him with the safety of their children, a testament to the trust he had seemingly earned in his community. Outside of his work, Castro had a passion for music. He was known to play bass guitar in several local bands, performing at community events and gatherings. In a bitter twist of irony, he even partook in searches for missing individuals, including some of his victims. To friends, neighbors, and acquaintances, Ariel Castro seemed like a regular, if somewhat reclusive member of the Cleveland community. Little did they know he was hiding a horrifying dark side. Castro's descent into criminality can be traced back to childhood when he was abused by his parents and by an uncle. It's possible that being made to feel helpless at a young age gave him the desire to make others feel helpless and planted the seeds for future behavioral issues, warping his perception of self-worth and relationships. His first marriage ended due to his wife leaving after he had abused her habitually. On one horrific occasion, his violence was so extreme that it resulted in a blood clot in his wife's brain. These episodes weren't isolated incidents, but rather indicative of a pattern of behavior where Castro exerted power and control through physical intimidation and violence. Many people face trauma throughout their lives and don't descend into such depths of depravity. In Castro's case, a lack of intervention, combined with his own choices, led to a horrifying and disturbing crime. Between 2002 and 2004, Castro kidnapped 3 young women from the streets of Cleveland. Michelle Knight was his first victim. She was abducted at the age of 21. Amanda Berry was kidnapped a day before her 17th birthday. Berry would go on to bear a child with Castro. And at just 14, Gina de Jesus was the youngest of the victims. Each of these 3 kidnappings followed a familiar pattern. Castro would offer them a ride, and once they were in his vehicle, he'd take them to his house at 2207 Seymour Avenue, where they would become prisoners. The conditions inside Ariel Castro's house were the stuff of nightmares. The women were confined in a veritable prison, with windows boarded up to prevent any hint of the outside world from penetrating their grim confines. Their rooms, more aptly described as cells, were fortified with alarms, chains, and heavy padlocks. Each was uniquely customized with restraints designed to limit mobility and reinforce their captivity. The physical torment was relentless. The women were subjected to routine beatings and suffered repeated sexual assaults. But the wounds weren't just physical. Castro was adept at psychological torture, creating an environment of perpetual terror. The sound of footsteps, a door creaking, and even the shift in the atmosphere when Castro was home all became triggers of impending abuse. He would intentionally foster distrust among the women. Through a combination of lies, half-truths, and manipulations, he pitted them against each other. By ensuring they viewed one another with suspicion, he diminished the likelihood of them banding together to resist or escape. His mind games didn't end there. Castro would often engage in cruel ruses, like leaving a door seemingly unlocked or allowing a small window of apparent freedom, only to lie in wait, ready to dole out severe punishments if any of the women took the bait. This strategy not only physically confined the women, but mentally entrapped them in a state of hopelessness, making the very thought of escape a dangerous fantasy. Castro's twisted need to commemorate the anniversaries of their abductions showcased the depth of his depravity. These grim celebrations involved serving cake, a perverse attempt to normalize the horror and perhaps even mock the tragedy of their predicament. Ariel Castro's actions are a stark testament to the absolute disregard for human autonomy. He viewed these women not as human beings with rights, feelings, dreams, or desires, but as objects to be controlled, manipulated, and used for his own perverse satisfaction. On May 6, 2013, a decade after the first kidnapping, Amanda Berry saw an opportunity to escape. With the help of a neighbor, Charles Ramsey, who responded to her cries for help, Berry managed to get out of the house and call 911. This led to the rescue of DeJesus and Knight and the arrest of Ariel Castro. Castro was charged with multiple counts, including kidnapping and rape. In July 2013, he pled guilty to 937 of the 977 charges against him, in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 1,000 years. However, a month into his sentence, on September 3, 2013, Ariel Castro was found dead in his prison cell, an apparent suicide. The three women have since tried to move forward with their lives. They've displayed immense resilience, writing books, giving interviews, and even establishing foundations to help other victims of abuse. Though the tangible shackles have been cast aside, the deep-seated psychological wounds inflicted by such a profound breach of autonomy may never truly heal. This macabre saga raises an unsettling question. What drives someone to commit such heinous acts? Like many of history's most notorious abusers, Ariel Castro exhibited traits of a psychopath. So what exactly is a psychopath? The term psychopath has been around since the 1800s, deriving from the Greek words psyche meaning soul and pathos meaning suffering. It referred to any mental illness, but its definition is much different now. Hervey Cleckley's 1941 book, The Mask of Sanity, provides one of the earliest detailed descriptions of psychopathy. Cleckley describes psychopaths as outwardly normal yet profoundly morally flawed individuals. Psychopathy and sociopathy are often used interchangeably, but there are nuanced differences. Sociopathy is typically considered to have more environmental causes, whereas psychopathy may have more genetic roots. Psychopaths might be more calculating, organized, and manipulative, while sociopaths may act more impulsively. There are many traits and characteristics that are associated with psychopaths, such as superficial charm. They are often manipulative, have little to no remorse, and lack empathy. Lacking empathy is one of the key measures of a psychopath. A lack of empathy can often separate the bad in society from the truly evil. It's hard to say conclusively that Clark Wiley or Ariel Castro were psychopaths, but psychopathy, like so many things, is a spectrum. It's almost easier to try to ascribe their actions to a mental disorder than to admit that they truly could not care less about the people they tormented and abused. Josef Fritzl's story is one of the most haunting and disturbing criminal cases of the 21st century. His monstrous actions spanning decades have horrified the world, who disregarded the basic tenets of humanity and autonomy. Josef Fritzl was born into an Austria that was soon to be ravaged by the upheaval of World War II. This era, marked by political instability, economic hardships, and societal chaos, inevitably impacted the psyche of its inhabitants. Fritzl's relationship with his mother has been described as complicated. Reports suggest that she was a controlling figure in his life. Fritzl's criminal record in his younger years offers a glimpse into his problematic nature. The fact that he had a rape conviction as a young man clearly shows his attitudes towards autonomy and consent. As Fritzl entered adulthood and began his own family, his controlling nature became even more pronounced. His neighbors and acquaintances described him as a strict father, and this overt need for control can be seen as a precursor to the absolute control he would later exert over his daughter, Elizabeth. Despite these alarming tendencies and his dark past, Fritzl managed to lead a life that appeared normal on the surface. He was an electrical engineer by trade and had 7 children with his wife, Rosemary. They lived in a seemingly ordinary house in Amstetten, but beneath this facade of normality, a chilling secret lurked. It was in this house that Fritzl committed his most heinous crime. In 1984, he lured his then 18-year-old daughter Elizabeth into the basement of their home, drugged her, and imprisoned her in a concealed and soundproof chamber. This imprisonment would last for a staggering 24 years. Over this period, Fritzl repeatedly raped Elizabeth, resulting in her giving birth to 7 children in captivity. 3 of these children were raised by the Fritzl household above ground, while the others remained trapped in the basement with their mother. Fritzl's ability to manipulate and control extended beyond just his daughter. He convinced his wife Rosemary that Elizabeth had run away to join a cult, using letters he forced Elizabeth to write as evidence. This narrative, coupled with Fritzl's domineering and controlling nature, kept the secret hidden for over 2 decades. The narrative of Fritzl's actions, the calculated planning of the dungeon, the systematic abuse of his daughter, and his cunning manipulation of those around him align disturbingly with traits often seen in psychopaths. The case finally unraveled in 2008 when one of the children conceived in captivity, Kirsten, fell seriously ill. Fritzl was forced to take her to a hospital. Suspicion arose when he couldn't adequately explain the girl's medical condition and background. Authorities began an investigation, which eventually led them to Elizabeth and the other children in the basement. Josef Fritzl's arrest and subsequent trial captivated global attention. In March 2009, he was found guilty on charges of murder due to the death of one of the children shortly after birth, enslavement, incest, forced imprisonment, and coercion. He was sentenced to life in prison, and given his age, it was highly unlikely that he would ever be released. Fritzl reportedly expressed no remorse for his actions during his imprisonment. His actions, profoundly violating the principles of autonomy and human respect, are the very essence of treating someone merely as a means. While Elizabeth and her children have tried to rebuild their lives since their ordeal, the scars of such profound betrayal and abuse by a family member will undoubtedly remain. Fritzl's story serves as a chilling testament to the depths of cruelty one human can inflict upon another. If you've stayed with me through this journey, it's undeniable that the tales of Clark Wiley, Ariel Castro, and Josef Fritzl have left a chilling echo in your mind. These figures stand as symbols of humanity's most malevolent side. Examples of what ensues when one person devalues another to such a degree that they're only seen as a means to an end. It would be comforting to tell you that by shining a light on these heinous actions, by discussing them, we might bring an end to such monstrosities. But the grim reality is, these horrors persist, lurking in the shadows of society. They're a testament to the fact that no matter our advancements, our educations, or our moral standings, the potential for unspeakable cruelty exists, and it's oftentimes easier for us to look the other way. While it might be tempting to focus on the monsters, the true tragedy lies with the victims. In the world of true crime, we're so often engrossed by the perpetrators that we forget about the lifelong scars borne by the survivors. It's not just about surviving, it's about the stolen years, the psychological chains that remain long after physical ones are broken, and the trauma echoing through lifetimes. Survivors might be heralded as lucky for escaping the clutches of their tormentors. But is it really luck when one has to grapple with PTSD, missed milestones, and the haunting memories that are triggered by the most mundane things? Their lives are forever altered, with a sense of normalcy becoming a distant, often unattainable dream. I wish I could provide you with more solace, a silver lining, or even a reassuring endnote, but sometimes stories don't have happy endings. The best we can do as individuals in this vast, complex world is to ensure that we ourselves never reduce another to being simply a means. And as you move forward, navigating the intricacies of human interactions, remember the profound impact of acknowledging someone's humanity, of treating every individual with the respect and dignity they inherently deserve. Apologies for not wrapping up on a hopeful note, but sometimes acknowledging the shadows, the unspoken fears, and the uncomfortable truths is the first step towards true understanding. The world can be a dark place, but remember, it's in the depths of darkness that even the faintest light can shine brightest. Yet sometimes, the darkness is simply overwhelming.